Hello, everyone. This is Rajesh Pichaimani, and I'm a solutions architect at Amazon Web Services. We are continuing with the part two of this two-part series on the topic of Q developer. What we are going to cover today is doing a quick recap of what was covered in the part one, then continue on with exploring the additional capabilities as outlined in the Q developer workshop. Once we have this basic information, then we will do a demo walkthrough, and as always, conclude with the references. For those who might have missed the part one, here is the QR code that links to the session here. We are taking this Q developer workshop that is outlined here. In this first part, what we have done is walk through how to do a quick sign up using your personal email address, integrate a Q developer Q plugin in the Visual Studio Code or the idea of your choice, and had some examples walk through. Some of them is code optimization, fixing the code, or even as simple as getting explaining what the code is about. Right. So that was what covered is in part one. In part two, we are focusing on these two sections: editing new and existing code, and architecture ideation and application troubleshooting. The first part would be covered in the IDE. In the second one, we will have to switch to the AWS console to continue on these two use cases. So let's get this started here live in the code. The first one, or the set of activities in the first section, first we will be enhancing the wallet functionality. For this, I'm going to Code Whisperer Basics folder, modern, e-wallet, modern, and then the wallet.py. For hypothetical illustration's sake, assume this e-wallet application is version 1 that has been launched, and it has some functionalities, X, Y, Z, etc. And you are a part of this project, continuing on with the expanding the additional capabilities. I'm going to launch as version 2 in the next few weeks. This is a scenario that we are assuming. And this wallet.app application consists of several functionalities, like as you're seeing here, the getting the balance of the wallet, listing the balance, so on and so forth. Now the task here as a user is to add some additional functionalities. Say, for example, you have been tasked to add to get the total number of transactions of the wallet and also filter out transactions based on the transaction type. If this is your hypothetical task in front of you, we're going to see how Q can help you assist in code suggestions. First is you can start with a comment with what you want to achieve, and you can press enter. Within few seconds, you can see Amazon Q is suggesting some code that you can choose to accept and modify, accept or access, or make more rejected, whatever the case may be. I'm going to use tab to accept it right now. And in reality, you will try to continue on refining this suggested code, right, rather than starting from scratch. So I did a shift, I did a tab on this, and it started giving me this suggestion accepted. So at the outright, I feel like I'm okay with this suggested code. I'm going to accept it, right? You can continue to further asking for the Q developer to suggest few more options and few more continuation of it. But for this demonstration sake, we are going to accept as it is. Next is filtering out the transaction based on the transaction type. After you have provided the comment, just type enter. Within few seconds, you see again, code Q is suggesting something. And I'm going to take this, accepting it, and then evaluating it to see if this meets my requirements. So far, these two are okay for me, and I'm going to accept it and save this file. Okay. So again, this is the simplest way of having the code suggested by Q with simple comments. Okay. The next one is going to a different file. In this case, I'm going to choose e-wallet folder, controller, directory, and list wallet.py. To speed it up and make the video succinct, I have some examples pre-created as outlined in the workshop. Here are 4 different examples. I want to create a logger at the info level, or a function to get the wallet repository using the DynamoDB client, function to list the wallets, and creating a Lambda handler function. These are 4 different scenarios, and we can start trying each one of them right now. I'm going to take this, come back to the end of the code. I'm going to type it, then save this. See, this one Q is generating something. There are sometimes it might take a little bit longer, but I have saved this example here as an output that came from Q developer. So here is a 3 set of lines that Q developer suggested for me. Likewise, the developer workshop also gave example prompts to get you different functions or different features that can be added to the code. In the last example in this section, we have this prompt creating a Lambda handler function. So Q suggested this information. And you can also modify the prompts for your needs, right? So here, for illustration's sake, I said create a AWS and Lambda handler function. Just to compare, both of them remains the same thing. So we know that whatever was suggested by Q here, based on the context, the Q is providing the AWS Lambda handler function. Okay. That's a second example here. One is enhancing the capability in the existing features or totally new features. Okay. Both are possible. The third one example here, as outlined in the workshop. For this, we will have to go to e-wallet tests model directory and test wallet.py. These are some of the pre-created tests that came as a part of the zip file when you originally installed it. Test creation of test wallet, listing the balance, etc. Here, the task is how can we create a function to top up the wallet, meaning adding the balance to the wallet. Or the second test is to transfer the value from one wallet to the other and check for accurate balance. Say if there are 2 people who have their accounts and one wanted to transfer money to the another one, obviously, ideally, the application should detect that X amount of dollar from the originating person and add the same amount of dollar to the other wallet, right? So we are asking Q to suggest to come up with a test like this. So either of these cases, both of these cases, we have seen that Q is able to suggest some code as outlined here. There might be some minor variation in the way how your output might look like because of the nature of the LLM's output. But pretty much you will see something like close to this. Okay. So those are the examples here. In summary, before we leave the section related to the IDE, the first time we saw using the e-wallet example, wallet.py, we enhanced the capabilities here with these 4 different functions, all by having the prompts as a part of the comment in the code itself. The next one is going to controller create wallet API, now PY, to have some functions like this created. And last but not the least, 2 examples as a part of the test model function, testing to top up and also transferring the balance. So those are the 3 example scenarios where Q can offer help in suggesting the code. And based on your organization and the project team's requirements, you can choose to accept it and make modifications as needed. Now we are going to switch gears to further explore where Q can help. And that's where we're going to switch to the console. Here I am in the homepage of AWS console. This is an icon for Q, as you might see similar in the VS Code. So you can click on this and start asking questions. We can go through a couple of questions. The first one is, assume that I am new to AWS Lambda and I'm not familiar with the execution time numbers, or I might have forgotten those numbers. So I'm going to take help from Q, asking what's the maximum execution time. Sometimes it takes a little bit of iteration here, but let's try a different example related to VPC. Let's get a few seconds to generate the response. As you're seeing here, we are getting some responses for my question related to the VPC and the resources within the VPC. I can still continue asking few other additional questions. So let's see what we can do here. We can further go in asking to create an application instead of just a question itself. Here I'm giving a requirement to come up with the architecture for an e-wallet application. So Q is suggesting we can go with the event-driven architecture, serverless computing, and these are some of the examples that you can actually try it in your own account and see what are the different variations. So in suggesting how we can have a secure, scalable, cost-optimized application along with the CI/CD DevOps process, and also provides sources for additional validation. So as you're seeing, the power of Q is not just asking for simple capability of a service, like an execution time of a Lambda function or like a resources within a VPC, but you can also extend this question even at the higher level, which is the architecture level. Okay. Next one in the second part is how we can use Q for troubleshooting. For the purpose of this example, we are going to go to Lambda and using this function, data analysis function, that came as a part of this workshop. There are few things that are missing in this function, and the objective here is to take help from Q to go from a non-functional function to a one that is going to work. So I'm going to create an event. We save this and test it. Here, as you are seeing here, the function has some errors we encountered. The first one is importing the module error. We can go and try to click here in the test. We are seeing the error message. We can click on diagnose with Amazon Q. And we can say, help me resolve. In few minutes, Q is going to give some help and for resolution. So we are going to take this resolution and walk through. For the first one is we need to add the layers. This function is missing the layers. So we are going to go back to the function. Call, add a layer. This is a layer that's been missing here. We are going to add it. What essentially is missing is the pandas package that was listed in the function. It didn't have the module, so we are adding it as a layer here. After adding it, we are going to continue testing it. Still, there is an error message. The error message indicates that there's a validation error in the environmental variable. So what we have to do is, there is a S3 bucket that is being referenced as a part of the Lambda function. So this information, this file name should be given into the function. Data analysis function, configuration, environmental variables, edit. Here, as we are seeing, Lambda is expecting these environmental variables. We already have the bucket information, but then the object value is missing. I'm going to give this, save it. Now, two information have been updated. One is the layers, the another one is the environmental variables. Let's try that testing one more time. Still, it is failing. So let's see what's happening. This is pretty straightforward. It says pandas is not defined on line 13. We can still continue to use Q for diagnosis, but we are going to go and directly make an edit here on line 13. There was a typo. Because we are making the changes in the code, we are going to deploy this. Click on text, test. Finally, we are able to have a working function, lambda function, the status code 200. So as you're seeing here as a summary, what we have did in the second part, in AWS console, we can use Q to get to know about various services. As the number of services continue to increase, we can leverage Q to ask questions about the service capability, etc. And also the architecture example, like as you have seen. In the second part, we are using Q for troubleshooting purpose. In this case of a lambda function, we use this lambda function. We started with the backbone. The first time it failed, we realized that the pandas model was not defined, so we added the layer. We ran it one more time. Second time it failed, and so we went ahead and modified the environmental variable and updated it. It failed again, and finally we found out a typo in the code and got it working. And this is what the end result looks like. Okay. So those were the two different sections as a part of the Q developer workshop that I have gone through. The first section is in the code, enhancing new capabilities or adding functionality or even for unit testing. As we shifted gears, we leverage Q for getting some details about services information and also for troubleshooting. And finally, before we conclude, these are the references. The first QR code talks about Q and the documentation, about the Q as a product. The second QR code is the user guide, the documentation. And we have also seen the QR code for the part 1 series as well in the slide number, earlier slides. That concludes my session here. Thank you, and hope you found the session useful. Thanks a lot. Happy building with AWS.